Tonight, we have brought together an incredible panel of experts and philanthropists who believe that the end of hunger is possible through action, empowerment, and investment. Without further ado, please let me introduce our amazing panel. We have Tim Prewitt, who is the global CEO of the Hunger Project. He is a food and agricultural systems expert and a global voice for change. We also have joining us Dr. Daisy Owomugasho. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Daisy, who's the Regional Director of Programs for East Africa and the in-field development expert influencing both policy and approach to development across East Africa and beyond. We also have Daniel Petre. He is a philanthropic advocate and influencer of Australian and abroad giving cultures. He brings an entrepreneurial and investment mindset and experiences and understands the risk and reward when investing in innovative solutions to solving problems, which matches THT's, the Hunger Project's approach to development. As I mentioned before, we also have joining us the incredible Deb Trotter. We are so grateful for Deb for her leadership and stepping in to join us this morning only. At 7:30, I rang her after we found out that Belinda was too unwell to facilitate this evening. Deb is a 30-year investor with the Hunger Project, which I think alone is incredible enough. She is also a phenomenal volunteer on our West Australian board. She has facilitated, I would say, 6 or 7 leadership programs for us over the years and was instrumental in establishing the Women's Leadership Program in Bangladesh with Badil, our country director there. So we are in very good hands this evening. I'm very excited to hand you over to Deb, and I will join you later at the end of this evening to wrap it up. Over to you, Deb. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I am very excited to be here, and I would have been a participant. And why I was really excited in terms of being a participant was because I have a lot of questions. And I think that not all my questions, but a lot of my questions I felt were going to be answered on this call. That's one thing. Second thing was I wanted to meet Tim Prewitt, because our global CEO, you know, it's so great to have you on this call and to be in relationship with you and partnership with you. So that was another thing for me, and to hear you and to hear what you're seeing in the world right now. And I think that's what we're all here for, to know what's going on globally, where we're in the middle of so many challenges. And you know, in this time of pandemics and, you know, climate change and wars, everything really that could be happening is happening. And so we're, you know, on this, so those were all the questions that I had coming in here. So I think it's just amazing that we're having this. What's going on? We want to hear from Tim about that. We want to hear from Daisy about what's going on the ground. And we want to hear from Danielle what his view is on the future of philanthropy and how philanthropy impacts at the end of hunger. And so this is a conversation, you know, I've got some questions, but some of those are very conversational. And if people want to chip in, and obviously at the end of this, we're going to ask you to put any questions you have in the chat room, so that we'll have 10 or 15 minutes at the end for all your questions. So thank you, Tim. I'm going to start with you. And as I say, it's just marvelous to have you on the call. And I know you're in Malawi and doing great things there. So thank you for making it work to be on this webinar today. And I know you're surrounded by people trying to make it work too. So for that team also, thank you. So can you tell us, Tim, you know, you've been in your role for 2 years, am I right? Yeah. So
about a year and a half almost.
Yeah. Yep. Probably feels longer, I would think. But, you know, in this 1.5, 2 years, you know, just what, you know, what's happened? What are your observations over the last 18 months? What are the challenges we're facing globally? Just, you know, from your global perspective, I think that would be really important for everybody on the call.
Thanks very much, Deb. What a pleasure it is to be here with you and so many other committed investors in Australia. and for me too, this is a real treat to get to speak to everyone down under. So thanks very much for including me today. So like all of you, I think we go to the supermarket, we're seeing our prices rise. That's frustrating. That's uncertain. That's unsettling. We don't know where it's going. And that to me is something that impacts all of us around the world. Let me share a little bit from here in Malawi. And I know Dr. Dacey is going to share a little bit more from Uganda as well. When prices rise, if you spend 70 or 80% of your income on food, and those prices go up, it's a very serious thing. Moms go to the market and they buy less food, quite simply. And they have to choose what they're going to do with that food. And that's really the rub. The price of wheat has gone up 70% since last year. We're seeing similar increases in rice and maize, even though those two crops aren't directly affected by Ukraine. So we have inflation going on. We have the pandemic, of course, and the supply chain disruptions. The price of oil is coming up. All of that is leading to this price increase, and it's very meaningful to people on the ground. Oil has come up 4 times in Malawi. So it's prohibitive. People just can't buy it right now. And so we're looking at a very difficult crisis coming on. And you might say, okay, well, the wheat's still coming out of the ground in the Ukraine. The ports will be unblocked at some point. We're going to move that product. There's some truth to that. The men are fighting. They're not in the fields. There's not as much production going on, but there will be wheat coming out of Ukraine, and this may stabilize. A bigger concern over the long term is fertilizer. And what's happened in the Ukraine, which produces, and Russia, both countries produce a tremendous amount of fertilizer, which goes primarily to this region I'm in, Africa and the Middle East. When that stops, then farmers stop applying fertilizer. In Ghana, I was in Ghana 2 weeks ago, the price of fertilizer has come up 3 times. So farmers just won't buy fertilizer. That means we're going to feel this in 1 year from now, when less food is coming out of the ground in places like Ghana. I could go on, but let me stop there. The price increase has real and tangible impact on people in places like Malawi and Uganda and Ghana. We're going to hear a little bit more about that today. Thanks for asking.
So I think you're talking about what the future holds because of those changes, but can you say a little bit more about that and in terms of food security? I know you talk about food security, but the other changes that may happen as a result.
Yeah. Well, I think the knock-on effects, first of all, I mentioned the fertilizer. Second of all, you're seeing probably a greater push towards local food production. Us at the Hunger Project, we are, of course, very much behind this. The more food communities can grow, the better. So I think if there's hope in this, it is saying, what's the shift that people can make to provide better for their communities? And we're starting to see a little bit of that in spite of the fertilizer downturn. So there's that. We're also watching government policies change a little bit. India announced a few days ago they would stop exporting wheat. They're a major producer of wheat. You're also getting more stockpiling. The wealthier countries, including my own, they're actually buying more commodities up on the market to stockpile. And again, this really portion of the food here is imported, and the prices go up.
What does that mean on the ground, in terms of the ending of hunger in Malawi, for instance?
Yeah, well, we're going to get a setback. The big numbers are, we were expecting about 100 million people to be pushed into chronic hunger after the pandemic. That number is probably going to double, it looks like, after this latest crush. And I think the most, I was in a community yesterday, Pemba, which I know Australia has done terrific work to support. And, people there are doing fine. They're very proud of their work. They have a new epicenter that you can see the joy in their faces. Also, when you talk to people, you see the concern about what's coming. And, I don't want to over dramatize it. I don't want to create, more hysteria. At the same time, I think the more we can be there side by side, standing shoulder to shoulder with our communities to help them weather the storm, the better. And I expect that'll be in the next year or so. I hope
And-
not to be all doom and gloom. You should see the smiles on the faces when we come to Pemba, and the gratitude they have for all the partnership that has been there between THP Australia and Malawi.
And this future that you're talking about, how's the Global Hunger Project strategizing? What's your thinking about this?
Yeah, I think number one is that we have our steadfast belief that communities are in charge of their own future. And in spite of what's happening globally, we believe that fundamentally and wholeheartedly. And what we see in communities are even greater commitment for women's leadership, for resilience in the face of climate change, for water resources management, for working with indigenous seeds and crops that don't require as much fertilizer, doing things that in part will help weather the storm. So I think there's a lot of great work going on. I saw some of it yesterday. Dr. Daisy, I was in Uganda not too long ago. Wonderful work going on in Uganda as well. And I think in you mentioned Bangladesh, there's just so much going on where we are there with our communities and helping them through this time.
And so in terms of your approach, is more and more to build local community resilience? That's what I'm hearing?
Absolutely right.
No, go on.
Resilience of the community has been fundamental to us, but now even more so, and especially looking at crops that are climate resilient, that can tolerate a little more drought, because we're seeing varying rainfalls. Looking at other forms of nutrient fertilizer. I was at a farm yesterday where the family was using manure to fertilize their farm very effectively. They had doubled their yield of maize with just simply using manure. So we're seeing return to more natural, ecologically friendly systems of growing, and we're looking to support that.
So it just sounds to me that there's a shift. There has to be a shift in our mindsets in terms of the future. I
agree. Yes, I love it. I think we have to begin thinking of our food systems as providing healthy, nutritious food for all that is in harmony with our planet. It's a big job. Our commercial agriculture systems, they do well to feed literally billions of people, and we're shipping food all over the planet. But there's a cost to that. In my own country, we're seeing soils being depleted because of fertilization and some of the pesticides that are applied. And we need to shift towards more organic production, more natural production. And I think places like Malawi offer tremendous hope, because they haven't gone through this commercial agriculture system the way Australia has or the United States has. And so they offer this opportunity to increase production and provide more food in their own countries using these natural methods. So I think that mindset shift is very important. When I started doing this work so many years ago, I think all of us thought, we need more food. Let's produce more and more and more. And my family farm, we saw yields come up. It was all due to commercial agriculture. And there was a lot of benefits to that. But now I think everybody's thinking those were short-term gains. We need to be thinking about care for our planet. We need to be thinking also about healthy and nutritious foods. So I think there's a greater emphasis right now on this healthy, nutritious food for all, making our systems work for people.
And is this the focus now of the Global Hunger Project?
Yes, we have. So with our global strategy, it's a 5-year strategy, and we have 5 what we call imperatives. And these are the prevailing conditions that we have to work with if we're going to end hunger. One, of course, is human nutrition. Looking at that from the perspective of, are we feeding people healthy, nutritious food? Second is gender. We know women's leadership goes a long way in combating hunger. And we also know we took a step back during the pandemic. And we need to be conscious of that and work toward a better future for women's leadership. Third of all, technology. We're seeing technology applied to so many different aspects of life. It has political implications. It has even agricultural implications. So how are we working with technology? Conflict. 5 out of 9 of the African countries we work with are seeing increased conflict. And we have to recognize that a good portion of hunger worldwide are in areas of conflict. And finally, climate change. You know, we here in Malawi, we just had some tremendous flooding in one of our epicenters, never before. And what happens with climate change in Africa is that the rainfall patterns are varying, and that has really shifted how folks can grow food here.
Wow. So with these are big 5 major issues, right? So how are you intending, how's the Global Hunger Project intending to impact those 5 areas?
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately our impact's going to be felt in the communities where we work. And so it's our role as Global, THP Australia, so many others around the world, is to support those communities as they go through the implications of these 5 different imperatives and then make progress on it. So there are a number of areas here, you know, climate, as I mentioned, climate smart agriculture, drought resistant seeds, looking at new forms of plant nutrition. In gender, women's leadership, we need to double down on our efforts there and ensure that women are rising and making the decisions, access to resources. We know that when women have access to farm tools and equipment and opportunity, that they make tremendous use of that. So that's another key point. I could go on, but all of these imperatives are really helping to guide us. And what we're doing, just 2 weeks ago, we were in Ghana, and our countries came together. Dr. Daisy was there, so many others were there. And we said, okay, what does this mean for Uganda in the next 5 years? And so Dr. Daisy and her team, who know the conditions on the ground and close to the communities, they're making the decisions on where these 5 imperatives are most critical for them and how they're going to guide their own strategy.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, that's a good segue into Dr. Daisy. So Daisy, following on from there, why don't you tell us about what's happening in your part of the world, what's happening in your communities, what's happening, I know, social policy you're very, very involved in. So why don't you just share with us, so this is kind of that's the high level view. Now let's look at what's happening on the ground in Africa. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Deborah. I'm also happy and excited to be here. And I've seen so many names I recognize. So it's a pleasure to be here once again. In Uganda, it is maybe a minor reflection of what Tim has just said. We are part of the global environment, and we are also facing almost similar situations as the rest of the world. We have seen a tremendous increase in the price of goods, of fuel, and then also these are translated into the increase in the cost of services. For example, the price of fuel has more than doubled from $1 a liter to over $2 per liter. And that has an effect across the board, from transport for people to transporting goods. In terms of the context for our communities, somebody who was growing, for example, potatoes and selling them maybe in the city, because of the high cost of fuel, they sell less because it is not easy to transport. And today, actually, one of the papers, one of the dailies, people are crying on the cost, the milk per liter has gone down from 3,000 shillings, that's about $1, to about 25 cents. So because I think this involves big trucks moving across from the rural areas to the big city, to where the milk is processed and packaged. So this has gone down, and it is also affected that the people's purchasing power has also gone down. So that means, yeah, the cost of living has gone high. People don't have money, so the people who want to sell don't have where to sell. So it's sort of a complexity of problems. Some of the other aspects, for example, which directly concern us is, for example, the cost of a bar of soap, which has also more than doubled. This has wider implications, especially during this COVID period. If someone doesn't have soap, that means washing hands frequently, the hygiene practices sort of go down. Anyway, so basically this is the situation we are facing. We have the high cost of prices, and of course our people already, they were vulnerable, living on the number of people living on $1, less than $1 a day, there were many. So now if the prices increase, then definitely their purchasing power also goes down. But like Tim said, we are also, through our approach, we are empowering communities, especially where we work, to make sure that they can be resilient enough to weather the storm. Michelle, when she was introducing, said we work through a holistic model approach, where we are empowering communities, clusters, to change their mindset, to be in charge of what is being done. And some of these practices include empowering them to go back to proper or good agronomical practices, agroecological farming, which reduces on the usage of the products which maybe the communities would be able to buy. They use, we've tried to go back to the traditional seeds, which are more drought resistant and also pest resistant. And with this, we are also trying to use organic products, fertilizers, as well as the pesticides. So this limits the amount of money the communities can actually spend on the high prices for the chemical fertilizers, for the chemical herbicides, and actually also to be able to get more nutritious and healthy foods in return. So this one is something which is helping our communities become resilient, and also to be able to have food throughout to have food continuously. Of course, we are also encouraging communities to grow fast maturing nutritious foods, particularly the vegetables, which they can grow in their backyard gardens, using water from the household. And also those who can, we also support them, facilitate them, or help learn how they can harvest water within their compounds, the water they are throwing away. So with this, they can have vegetables which are healthy, and also throughout or during the whole period. And this particularly helped us a lot during COVID, where communities, where we were all locked down, we are home. So we are like, hey, what do? You can't go to the market, you can't go anywhere. So this is where the issue of the backyard gardening became very, very critical, with the communities being able to have some vegetables, at least, which are within their compounds. Of course, the methodology goes beyond maybe the food only. I've talked about some of the health aspects, for example, the water, and also having soap. So we also have, in our communities, we have been able to create a leadership structure, and also the people who are able to go beyond and spread the message, whom we call animators. In Uganda, we have over 2,600 animators. And these were instrumental, again, in where the radios couldn't reach, where TVs couldn't reach, to be able to talk to communities about, first of all, I think the preventive measures for COVID, but also the food security systems. We need to grow this, we need to do this, we need, yeah, everybody, do you have vegetables around your garden? So the system that was created was able to help the community, again, be resilient and come out of COVID maybe much stronger. And this was an effort which was recognized by our governments also and others to make sure that we are actually communities where government couldn't reach at a particular time. The communities were there to take their place.
Yeah, is that anything else, Daisy?
Yeah, of course I could go on and on. Yes, we have, some of you may be aware, but we have this very wonderful tool, which we call the Vision, Commitment and Action tool. It's what we've used since we started, and it is able to help us or help the communities visualize where they want to be, from where they are to areas, to places where they can be able to improve their lives and become self-reliant. So this is a tool for mindset change, and we've been using it with communities. It's very versatile and can be applied in almost every situation. When we talk of poverty, it can be used for people to have a vision of where they want to be in poverty. When we are talking about food security right now, we are looking at what is our vision, how much food are we looking at, what systems are we looking at, what is the vision for our community, for our household. And from there, we work backwards to where we are and try to create a path on how we can actually end there. Tim has talked about it. We work with the women, we work with local governments, and we are looking at this holistic approach. Sometimes it's not just about the food. Like I've said, if your communities do not have water or they are not healthy, then the food becomes a little bit redundant. So they will need that health aspect to be able to continue. We also have some of the gender aspects. Some of the food may be grown and it is sold by the husband. So we look at aspects where the food grown, is it actually used by the household equitably? Do they use it? Do the children eat? And we also have cases, we have to look at those gender relations. We have to look at empowerment aspects, who produces what, and also sometimes equipping or supporting these communities to actually do something. Sometimes it is not easy. We are talking about having an income or being able to go to the market if you can't produce at home to be able to buy something. But how do you do that? Sometimes you need something to generate that income. We also have a program that facilitates or supports particularly women to come together to save and be able to start something. This one we have had so many great examples on what women can do. For example, with maybe $50. Somebody may look at $50 and say, what can it do? Or even $20, But this can help a woman set up maybe a pancake business or a charcoal store. And from there, they keep on growing and they're able to feed their families and also be able to address some other needs or challenges. So we have all these where they are meeting their needs. We have cases of, some women. I have one interesting case which made me feel like, we may not know where we are starting from and what it means for somebody maybe to have a changed mindset, to work for something. I have a case where we went to a community, mobilized, talked about mindset change, about being able to start something and visualize and get your dream. And one of the examples was one lady who shared that she was able to start like a pancake business and eventually bought a mattress. Well, somebody was like, okay, in my thinking, maybe you're thinking bigger. But there are some of these aspects where somebody has been sleeping on the floor and they are able to change. And slowly you find they are reaching somewhere. So basically we have those success stories. We are talking with government. We are creating platforms and spaces where we talk with government. Recently, we had meeting with the Parliament, the Parliamentary Association for Nutrition and Food Security, and where we are saying these are the issues, these are the prices, this is the situation, what is happening. And they were able to come on board and appreciate, and we have a memorandum of understanding on working together. And recently we are looking at the budget for nutrition. That was last week. Yeah, with same members of parliament, what can be done in the budget for nutrition? Where is it? Why is it reducing? Why is it not there? So we believe that our spaces also are finding a channel to which, in which we can also approach government or work with the government. It is interesting to note that from where we started, even empowering women, we have some other offshoots. For example, apart from just the empowerment to be able to have people who are living lives of self-reliance, we have seen also people moving into levels of leadership. And right now we have actually 2 members of parliament, 2 women now who have moved from being our animators, being a part of the leadership structures at our epicenters, and now they are in parliament. So those are the people who are again spreading our message, talking about it, saying how it works, how government should be able to improve on it, or work on it, or work with us. And so we are really proud of what we are doing. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Wow, you should be very proud. That's incredible. So thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so there's a question for all the panel, which is what is this shifting of power? You know, we're talking about shifting of power, communities. What is this shifting of power, and what does it mean to you, this shifting of power? Daniel, do you want to start there so we can hear from you?
Sure. I'm probably the least capable to answer this question given the esteemed panel, but I'm happy to lob in with random comments. I think I don't think it's so much shifting of power, it's shifting of resources. I think if you shift the resources to people in communities, then they become obviously more self-reliant, and then they have control or power of their own, under their own control. So I don't think it's so much thinking about where does the power sit, it's where are the resources sitting, and how do you ensure the resources are allocated appropriately to people as they need them. And that's resources both in the skill set as well as the hard set, whether it's water or whether it's seeds, what have you. So to me, it's more about thinking about how you ensure greater distribution of more resources to communities that will allow them to take more control. And by having control, you then have the power.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Tim?
Yeah, Daniel, great answer. I don't think I can answer it better than that. That condition, wherever community is on their journey, to be able to control their own resources, I think is so fundamental. And one of the reasons I'm so proud of our organization, you just heard from Daisy, and our teams on the ground are so committed to that vision that our communities have for going forward. And rather than have a top-down approach, we really stand shoulder to shoulder with them and say, how can we help you get those resources you need to make it happen? So I just want to echo what Daniel said and say, we can always do better at this. And I think we're looking at that more seriously now than we ever had before. At the same time, I think at the Hunger Project, we really stand apart from the crowd on international work in that we've always championed the voice of the community in their own, in forming their own destiny and respecting that. Dr. Daisy mentioned somebody buying a mattress. I mean, let that family decide what they need best for their own future. A good night's sleep, I'm not going to discount that for anybody. That's fantastic.
Daisy, do you want to answer that question about the shifting of power in what it means to you? And
I would like to borrow an example I read somewhere where somebody was saying shifting the power would mean, for example, if you think about which requires the marker until you get the right balance. So we are looking at, for the right weights. So we are looking at a mix of interaction, a mix of flexibility, the resources, the decision-making until we get the right balance, rather than tilting the balance where the power is maybe in one side, and then you are saying you are shifting. Shifting shouldn't be tipping the balance totally to the other side, but balancing to make sure that both the persons who are maybe right now making the decisions or who are giving the resources. I don't know.
These ones. You want how many?
I think
Hey,
someone needs to turn off their.
I don't know.
Okay, that seems to have happened. Sorry, Daisy, you finish.
Yes, so the shifting needs that balancing of weights, balancing decision-making, balancing flexibility, balancing the resources on who is actually doing that. And to me, I think when we talk of shifting the power, we have to also look
Sorry,
at these
Daisy, just hold on a second. Let me just help you. If anybody who's listening doesn't have their, they haven't put themselves on mute, please put yourself on mute because I can hear something in the background. So please put yourself on mute. Thank you. Sorry, Daisy, please continue. So
we've also seen, I think maybe it is at different levels. We've been having the global north and global south. That is a topic altogether out there. In our context, we are also looking at what we are doing. Maybe our local governments, maybe our even national governments. Where does the power lie? Who decides on what is happening within the community members? Who decides on which policies, on what programs affect the communities? Are they consulted? Do they participate? Are they part of it? So to me, it's that balance of where maybe you bring resources, but you know that there are also resources where, and there is knowledge, there is a decision-making powers where the communities are concerned, because eventually that is where the development is supposed to happen. Those are the people who are supposed to be benefiting from the policies or programs. The only thing I wanted to just add would be that we should appreciate that it takes time. We have seen this coming, but and some of us maybe expect results very quickly. I think somebody also gave an example some time back where a horse which is used to being tied, once, even when the rope is removed, it still stays in one place, not knowing that it has been untied. It is a process which we think will also take some time, but sooner or later we'll get there, because the people who we are planning for, we think are planning for, need to be part of that planning and implementation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Daniel, talking about resources, it'd be really good to hear from you. I'd love to hear how you got involved in the Hunger Project, because we know Tim, we know Daisy, but like, I'd love to know from you, how did you get involved?
Sure. So the longer backstory is that I became sort of educated in philanthropy when I was a vice president on campus working at Microsoft, working with Bill Gates. And as the world knows, he's a great philanthropist. And so I became inculcated with his mum's actual approach to philanthropy, which would be summarized as, if you've been lucky in life, it's your responsibility, not your choice, to give back. And that sort of really made sense to me. And when I came back to Australia, we set up in the early 90s, we set up our foundation, our family foundation, with quite a large chunk of our net worth, and started doing some projects, research chairs in medicine and stuff. And then came across Kathy, who was the CEO of Hunger Project Australia at that point in time. And I had spent a lot of time looking at projects outside of Australia, because I was also a great fan of Peter Singer and effective altruism. And Peter Singer is actually an advisory board member on my new not-for-profit startup. He and Bill Gates are the two advisory board members. And I love his approach to this, sort of being really crisp about, if you're going to spend $1, where do you spend it? And I love the Hunger Project model. You know, I'm still not comfortable with the whole kind of animators and sort of weird names, but I love the model. I love the model of this sort of long-term, sustainable change to a community's life and all aspects of it, but driven by the community. That made so much sense to me, and them becoming self-reliant. So we funded the first of our epicenters ourselves. Our family did in Burkina Faso, which is a very troubled country, as we all know. That took a bit longer to get to self-sustaining because of the turmoil in that country. And then subsequent to that, we decided as a family to do another one. So we then were just blessed to meet Daisy, and with another or a company, actually, a company and our family have now half funded the epicenter in Uganda, in Aruku province in northern Uganda. And I went there with my eldest daughter to visit when they were allocating the land. And so that was the sort of, and we will continue funding epicenters. When this one's funded, we'll fund another one, etc. I think the only other project, which I think will tie into the other, and maybe to open up a bit of a conversation, is it, and this clearly comes from my 30 years of being trained in venture capital and looking at problems and trying to think of better ways to solve them. And you don't solve them by having rich people lob in and tell people what to do. That's not the answer. And there's a great book written by how billionaires can fuck up the world by telling people on the ground what to do. So that's not the answer. But there is the good side of that is how you think about, look at a problem and see, can you help make a better outcome? And I think in our case, when we were in Uganda with Daisy and we visited villages around the planned epicenter, and knowing the epicenter will take 7 years to become functional, one of the things that was so incredibly obvious was source of water. And yes, of course, when the epicenter exists, there'll be this massive commercial bore and there'll be water to the village, and everyone will be sort of 15-20 minutes walk to the epicenter, but that's years away. And as we all know, for those next few years, those people in those villages are, someone in their family is schlepping either 6 to 10 hours a day back and forwards to the river to get dirty water. And usually that's young women, because they are least effective in the fields. So they're not going to school. The water they bring back is dirty, and so babies are dying of waterborne diseases. Women are getting bacterial infections, menstruating with clean water. And as we found out subsequently, to my great horror, young women are being raped at the riverbank because the young men are waiting for them. They know they're coming. And so obviously that was horrific. But we thought, well, why wouldn't you, if you know you're going to have this epicenter being built in the long term for the whole, why wouldn't you, as a first project or early on, stick a bore in every village around the epicenter for two reasons? One, immediately bring some relief to that village. And so they've got clean water, babies won't die, women won't get bacterial infections, girls can go to school, and oh, by the way, not get raped. So it seems to be a kind of a pretty clear benefit. But also you're showing to the community that this is real. And I think one of the things, there's a lot of trust these communities have got to have to say, we're the Hunger Project, hey, give us your land. And oh, by the way, in 7 years' time, you'll have this thing. And of course, there are steps along the way, but that's a huge trust relationship you're creating. Now, because you've got people of the credibility of Daisy who are leading a lot of this work, you can see why the trust is built. But it felt to me like we being the Hunger Project can probably create earlier milestones or earlier deliveries along the road that shows the people in these villages we are real and we are here not just for the end project, but along the way. And I thought our idea was that water bores around in each village around an epicenter made a lot of sense. Now, subsequently, we've now funded a whole other lot around another epicenter in Malawi. And I've also now got two friends who've now joined me. So we're now going to be doing 2 sets of bores per epicenters each year for going forward. So that project, which we've called Water First, will kick off. But I think there may well be other projects that don't dilute from the main goal of providing this sort of holistic, sustainable, full infrastructure, but can add value along the way. And things may well be in the area of sustainable agriculture, in seed provision, particularly the new GMO seeds that are more water tolerant, more salt tolerant, etc. So now, I haven't got any great ideas yet, but it seems to me that having other benefits you can put in that are what they need, not what you think they need, what they need, that enhance the overall project and don't detract from it, seems a really good modification or addition to the THP strategy. But that's so our involvement now is we will fund an epicenter. We'll do an epicenter forever. We'll keep doing epicenters, and we'll try and grow the Water First project again, even from where it is now, to be there to try and over time, if we can, put water bores around every single epicenter as the epicenters are commissioned, are started in the
Wow. Thank you so much.
That's right.
Really. But I know that you've got a vision for philanthropy in Australia. I don't know whether it's a global vision for philanthropy, but I know you've got one for Australia. So, and I just wondered if you wanted to just share a little bit about, that vision. And also, I just wonder how that vision relates to everything we've been hearing. And maybe we can have a bit of a discussion after that, after you've shared your vision.
Sure. Look, so from an Australian perspective, and so one of the things that I've been doing for nearly 30 years is funding research into philanthropy in Australia. Part of it was from my experiences in America, where philanthropy is a thing, and Australia where it's not, trying to understand the differences. And our next report will come out. It's done by the universities, not done by me. So UNSW, one of the best universities in the country, is doing it. It's an academic piece. It'll be out in 2 or 3 weeks' time. But the punchline is two things. Firstly, Australia is not a giving nation. The reality is, if you're giving as a percentage of GDP, Australia ranks well under New Zealand, the UK, the US, and Canada. So any sort of weird myth that we think we're a giving nation is wrong. We're just not. Now, we can talk about why, or, we're a young country, or whatever excuse you want to make, but we're not. What's even worse is that our wealthy are disproportionately less giving than wealthy in every other country. And I don't mean 10% less, I mean 90% less. Our wealthy are disproportionately the lowest givers to philanthropy of any of those countries by significant orders of magnitude. And what's also bad is, over the last 10 years, globally, wealth has done this in any of those countries. The wealthy have got wealthier. In Australia, giving has really not moved at all. It's moved a tiny bit. So you haven't seen this translation of more wealth going into philanthropy, which I think is appalling. So the quick thesis is that, starting at the top, is that, if you've been fortunate in life, you should give. And I'm also a great supporter of the Warren Buffett Lucky Gene model, which is, I just happened to be born at a time when my programming skills initially and my technical investing skills are useful. They wouldn't have been very useful in the savannah 1,000 years ago. So I'm just lucky. And I think if you are lucky in life, it is your responsibility to give back, and not just give back, give back to your community, but also try to think beyond that to people who really don't have, if people like the Hunger Project were not helping people in Malawi and Uganda and places, there's nobody else. Money's not going to magically fall from the trees. You could argue in some countries like Australia, and maybe even parts of India now, there is enough money within the country to solve their problems. That isn't the case in East and West Africa. If there's not external help, people die forever. So I think that then brings us to my model, or the model of philanthropy that we're working on now at my new thing called Startup Giving, which is, we think that there's a lot of people making a lot of money in technology now, even with the corrections going on. And the young people, 25 to 40 odd, they're different from rich white people, old rich white people. By that I mean, they tend to, as a cohort, be much more socially progressive. They don't think they deserve the money they've earned. They know they've made trade-offs and worked hard, but they don't believe that they have earned it, and they feel that inequality is not a good thing. So what we're trying to do is work with the hundreds of people who are sitting on quite significant wealth in our community, our venture capital innovation community, and get them to set up PAFs, or charitable foundations, to start giving more. And hopefully a lot of that will also go overseas, because I think you can't just, if you think about trying to alleviate suffering or create opportunity, your lens can't be just Australia. Sure, you might bias more if you want, because there are lots of issues, Indigenous people clearly and others, but some part of your resources and your intellectual capacity needs to go to solving problems in the most complex parts of the world. And Africa, you don't have to go very far past East Africa to find those situations. So we need to be more giving. We need to talk about it more in Australia. We need to be honest with ourselves and admit we're not that giving a nation. We need to challenge ourselves to be more giving. I'm not saying we should all sell our houses and cars and live in a tent, but there are people sitting on enormous amounts of wealth where some chunk of that wealth is not helping their lifestyle at all. It's wasted capital. It's not helping their life. It's not helping someone's life in Uganda. So why wouldn't a proportion of that go to alleviate suffering? So yeah, that's my third act. That's my next role.
So you're really focusing on younger people who are more receptive. That's your approach.
Yeah. I've been in technology 45 years. I've been a venture, or 43 years, and I've been a venture capitalist for 30. And I spent all that time with younger people. Now, young could be 25 to 45, but yeah, younger. And that cohort, and a lot of those cohort have made a lot of money in recent years, and will continue to as innovation technology creates solutions to solve problems around the world. They have enormous amounts of wealth coming into enormous amounts of wealth, and I think there's a chance we can help them deploy that into the charitable space and really move the dial in giving levels. And I think do two things. Firstly, help them have a better life because they're giving back, help communities around the world who've got issues, but also be a beacon of a cultural change in Australia and say, well, why is it that this crowd over here is giving so much more and you guys over here aren't doing it? Why? What's the, and I think to really sort of start to not make people guilty. That's not the right answer, because that's not fair, but to sort of at least get people to question their own values and their actions. That's probably the thing.
Thank you. Thank you. Tim, I'd love to hear, but we haven't got very long before we open up for questions, but Tim, just your your perspective really on what you just heard in terms of the challenge, the challenge that you brought out to us right at the beginning, and what we're hearing with Daniel, and what you.
Yeah, well, first of all, this may come as naive, but the fact that the wealthy in Australia don't give much is news to me, because I'm partnered with you all, and you all seem to be doing an amazing job at getting the good word out about the Hunger Project and really finding like-minded people that have that generosity and have done so much worldwide. So I'm my jaw dropped when I heard your 90% statistic, Daniel, and no doubt your voice in Australia is leading to positive change. And as I look at the philanthropy in the United States, I think we've got work to do too. We have something called the Giving Pledge, where the ultra wealthy have pledged, huge amounts of their wealth to give away, and very, very few of those ultra wealthy have lived up to that promise. So we're in some ways we're very much with you, and I'd love to spend more time exploring that, Daniel. I think again, I hope you don't get out of this call and think I'm like the Chicken Little or the doomsday theorist about what's coming. I do think that communities are going to have a very difficult time, and I tend to believe, like in Australia, we have this very wonderful group of investors that have committed their life to, in many cases, to really making a difference in the world. And our opportunity is to activate this group further still and call our friends, our partners that have this shared belief that we have, that everyone deserves to be free from hunger, and that hunger is unacceptable in this day and age. And that call in the past has resulted in a tremendous outpouring of support. And I'm optimistic that with our continued voice in the space, we will continue to attract like-minded people to help us in this cause.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Well, maybe we'll open up for Q&A now. Let's have a look. So I've got some questions here. Got a few from Diane Grady. Are we doing anything to shift the mindsets of young boys and men so that raping girls isn't okay? That's one question. Is there any impediment?
Younger boys and men,
I think there's some interference. Maybe Daisy, is there some interference with your phone? I don't know.
I'm also hearing it from here. I don't know where.
Oh, okay.
It's a second.
Okay. Is there any impediment to communities accessing traditional seeds? Do big corporations support or hinder this? That's a question. Daniel, well, why don't we answer those two first, and then there's one for Daniel.
Okay. I think we had actually made a huge leap towards on addressing these issues. We've been for the last 10 years or so, we've been addressing issues of child marriage. We've had a project called Her Choice, and all these are aimed at strengthening the position of girls and women in society, plus our gender empowerment program. What happened in COVID during the lockdown is, I would say it was a catastrophe, maybe next to COVID itself, because I think people were cooped together. We have had huge cases of pregnant girls who got pregnant, girls under 18 who got pregnant, rape and whatever within their own families. That was a huge blow to our program, a huge blow to the community, and I think to the country. So what is happening now is we've gone back to the mindset change. There has been so many issues coming up, including the mental health conditions after COVID due to the law. I think Uganda was a country which was locked down the longest, 2 years. We just opened in January. So it has catastrophic consequences on our communities, but this is definitely part of our programs, the mindset change, empowerment, even empowering themselves on how the girls themselves, the younger, the adolescents, the underage girls, on how they can protect themselves, on what they can do. Some, actually in Uganda, we also have some cases, we have karate lessons. How do you empower yourself? How do you guard against such? How do you prevent such from happening? How do you know? So we have mindset change. We have an organization we are actually working with closely. It's called Men Engage, where we are bringing in men to stop, rather than also, we are doing it sort of two ways: girls to protect themselves, but also this aspect of who is perpetrating this crime. How do we deal with this? So we have the two-pronged approach in terms of addressing this. Yeah, but as I said, the COVID situation didn't help so much. For the issue of accessing traditional seeds, traditional seeds in Uganda, at least, they've always been there. We have been having the traditional seeds and the other big corporations, the improved seeds. And what we realized, or what had been happening, is that the improved seeds, you plant once, you have to buy seed the next season. And like that. So you can't plant 2 seasons with 1 seed, what you get. So we've been encouraging you to go back to as I said earlier, to the traditional seeds. First of all, they are more resilient to drought and also pests, and they can grow much better without fertilizers. In terms of accessibility, we are also trying to build within our food security program. With our food banks, we are building, we are creating, supporting communities to create seed banks. These seed banks are mainly for traditional seeds, not the improved seeds, so that communities can actually have access to the traditional seeds, as well as learn also how to preserve the traditional seeds, as well as even the organic, making organic fertilizers and the pesticides, as I said. So we are shifting away. But of course, the big corporations try to put in the seeds, and we also realize that these traditional seeds, the yield may be lower, but they are more healthy. And in the long run, you get a community that is eating right, and it also has its own seeds. But it will take a time again to balance out. Right now, what we see is that the improved seeds, the yield may be much higher. If you put the improved seeds, you add chemical fertilizers, chemical pesticides, the product may be bigger, the volume, but the health benefits and the effect on the climate and all those aspects, it's sort of a negative. So we are trying to balance out to increase the usage of traditional seeds and also other organic practices to make sure that we have enough food in our communities.
Great, thank you, Daisy, thank you. Daniel, this is from Diane. Why not publicize more that wealthy in Australia are 90% less likely to give? Why not publicize it? I know that Australia isn't great in general, but this is shocking, she says.
Look, it is shocking and it is publicized. So the problem is, generally speaking, the press, the business press in particular, isn't keen on promoting it, and the government doesn't want to promote it. I can relay conversations I've had with prime ministers where they know what the data is, but they're unwilling to voice the fact that Australians are not giving, particularly wealthy Australians, because they feel it impacts their voting or their influence cohort. Same thing goes for the Australian newspaper, the AFR, etc. So we'll publish our new report in a few weeks' time. We'll go on the road. We'll take a roadshow. We'll try and get as much noise as we can. But it is, people don't want to be told something they don't think that makes sense to them. They want to be told we're very giving and we're a very philanthropic nation. The other point that's probably worth noting is Australia is the only OECD country that doesn't have an estate or death tax. And there is no question that the existence of an estate or death tax does motivate giving during someone's lifetime. And there's lots of data on this that I can point you to. Now, there's no way Australia's going to reintroduce a death tax, sadly, because we don't have sane political debates. We should. I mean, there's no reason that someone should hand over $200 million to their children. That's just ridiculous. They can hand over 150, right? That's still okay. But without that sort of motivator for the people who just don't want to give, you're not going to see a great change. You can appeal to people as there are in the THPA example. You know, obviously THPA, as Diane said, punches above its weight globally, but that's a rare occurrence. Generally speaking, we don't. So we are publicizing it. We'll do it again. I've been doing this, trying to publicize these reports for nearly 30 years. It's just not a receptive audience, generally speaking. The people you want to hear this are the rich people who aren't giving. And guess what? They're not going to change their mindset just because, sorry.
No, I was going to say, so you don't need to talk to them, really.
Well, yeah, I think for the recalcitrants, the wealthy people who for some reason think they deserve their 400 million and don't believe the world deserves a helping hand, I think we have to look to taxation of some form. Because you can't have a situation where wealth will continue to generate wealth. That's just happening. You're not going to stop that, right? You get these people who've got money make more money, and that just happens, right or wrong. That's what's happening. So the only way you're going to increase financially increase giving is more of those people see the light. Some are, and hopefully we'll have an impact on the younger community in terms of that. And there are some older people clearly doing that. But to get a wholesale change, you need there to be a way to pick up the recalcitrants in the taxation system. So that's the other sort of big goal that I have.
Right, big goal. Lots of big goals. Last question, which is a really good one, I think, to leave on. And maybe, Tim, you could answer this. It's from Rick Sussman. I'm looking at expanding my investment before the end of the financial year. Yay. What are the most strategic ways that the money will be used now? Do you want to answer, Tim?
I'll say a quick note from global perspective. Daisy might have some interesting comments too. You know, first of all, thank you, Rick. I mean, this is the time we so need support, and I'm just so grateful for you and the other Australian investors that are committed. You know, I tend to believe that the best decisions are made closest to where the problem is. And so I would say, which country do you think you would like to connect with and you would like to make an impact in, and then connect with those leaders? I tell you, Dr. Daisy knows how to use money to make effective impact. And I've seen it, right? As an example, I'm here in Malawi. I mean, our team here on the ground knows exactly how to go in and support communities on their journey, whether that's a water reservoir, whether that is improved health services, whether that is something like improved access to seeds or fertilizer. So I would just engage in dialogue with Philippe, your new country leader there. Very excited to meet him, and the rest of the team in THP Australia, and see where you can make that impact in consultation with our very talented country leaders like Dr. Daisy here.
And I was thinking, you know, it's a great question, you know, Rick asking that question, but it, in terms of leadership, you know, I mean, you guys, you're on the ground, you are leading the Hunger Project. Daisy is the personification of leadership in Uganda, and Roland's and everybody, all our people on the ground. But right, for our leadership, we're all leaders in ending hunger in our own ways. So what leadership is needed right now? I mean, is it just the answer that you gave to Rick for all of us here in Australia? What would you say? Is it the same answer?
Well, what I'm looking at for the Hunger Project is how do we we have great examples on the ground of us impacting. How do we most effectively influence governments to make the right decisions for people at the community level? Because there are significant policy conversations going on right now. We've had a key role in the UN food systems dialogue, exactly as I'm describing, healthy, nutritious food for all. And we've been there at multiple levels, at regional levels, at the UN in New York. We've been at the table for some of these discussions. I'll also just, you know, here in Malawi, the government for the first time is talking about mindset change among people. Mindset change. I'm thinking, wow, this is fantastic. Can we bring this to the national level in Malawi? 20 million people live here. We work with thousands and thousands. It's great work, but how do we get to millions? And I think we're starting to see that. Dr. Daisy mentioned her policy influence. So very exciting. When I was in Uganda, we met with the president's office. And again, they are really keen to take up some of our ideas and expand them. In Zambia, the president of Zambia may very well visit one of our sites. The Ministry there of Rural Development is so keen on expanding our work and expanding mindsets. So there is significant influence that the Hunger Project can have on the world. And that is an area where I hope we really double down on and expand so that millions and millions of more people can get access to the type of work that we do.
So look, I think on that note, a very good note to end on. Rick Sussman's just left a little message for you guys. He's saying he trusts you and John Coonrod to use his money strategically. It's always worked that way, he says. And I think that, you know, him saying that is really what's there at the heart of the relationship between us, is a relationship of trust. And so I just thank each and every one of you. I'm overwhelmed and sort of quite moved by our conversation today. And I think, you know, we need more of these conversations, don't we? You know, where we're able to to hear from you guys, but also to sort of nut through some of the things and to see what our role is. You know, what is our role here in Australia, and how can we be more, you know, how can we step up? And obviously our stepping up is in our giving. So just thank you, each one of you. It's so inspiring to be on this call. Daisy, you're amazing. Daniel, it's been fascinating listening to you, and I kind of want to read all these reports that you're, and Tim, a pleasure having you with us, and kind of, you know, getting to know you, because it is a relational thing, isn't it? The whole Hunger Project is a relational thing. Yeah, just thank everybody. Thank you, everyone. And I'm going to hand back to our illustrious Michelle.
Thank you so much, Deb. I'd like to echo my sincere thanks to our incredible panel. Dr. Daisy, I mean, an absolute inspiration as always. Daniel, thank you for your insights. I think there was a lot of chatter happening in the chat with your comments around Australia and our giving culture. So that's be very interesting. And Tim, thank you so much for giving us the real insight into the, you know, the complex global food system and the challenges that we are all facing together to ensure that we can actually feed nutritious, healthy food to this whole planet, which is, you know, my fundamental belief and the reason I joined the Hunger Project. So really one that touched my heart when you spoke about that today. So massive thanks to all of you. If anything that, you know, we have discussed today has, you know, struck a chord and you're interested in discussing your role in addressing global hunger and poverty, then please reach out to us. I think in the chat, there's an opportunity to jump on and, you know, and donate to our latest campaign. It is available there, or you feel free to contact myself or any one of the team here in the Hunger Project Australia. We'd be more than happy to chat with you about your role in hunger and poverty. Thank you again for your time. We are so grateful. Take care.